So the Gemara says as follows: Shabbos, it's the Brisa in the Gemara in Shabbos Daf Kuf Yutes Amud Beis Tanya. And Yosi Bar Yehuda Omer, and Yosi the son of Yehuda says, Shnei Malachi Asharit Melavin Leila Adam Be'erev Shabbos Ben Beis HaKnesses LeBeis. Two ministering angels escort a person from the synagogue to his home on the eve of the Shabbos. Echad Toiv Echad Ra. One is a good angel and one is a bad angel. Kshabal LeBeis, when he comes home, and he finds a lamp burning, the table set, and his bed made. He finds the home prepared for Shabbos. Malach Toiv, the Mordechai ben David song, all the things you're supposed to do for Shabbos. So Malach Toiv Shabbos Kach. So then the good angel says, may it be the will of God that it should be this way the next Shabbos as well. And the bad angel is forced to answer Amen against his will. But if not, in other words, if the house is not set for Shabbos, the bad angel says, may it be the will of God that next Shabbos should be this way. And now the good angel is coerced to respond in kind. Amen. And indeed, it is customary to make sure the table is set before Shabbos. At least there should be a tablecloth and lechem mishnah and wine on the table and candles if on the table side before Shabbos. And this teaching is also the basis for the custom that we have that when we come home on Friday night, before we make Kiddush, we say Shalom Aleichem to the angels, and we say Baruchuni L'Shalom to give us the bracha that Emir Hashem L'Shana Shabbos Acheres Kach next week should also be a beautiful Shabbos. Now, in the early Ashkenazi works, there is some interesting significance applied. Do you mind if I have some tissues, please? To these angels. Either way. So the Abu Dirham, perhaps the first, the earliest commentator on the Siddur and related topics, and he quotes this b'shem the Maharam Mirutenberg. The Maharam Mirutenberg was the Rebbe of the Rosh. Famously, he died in prison because he didn't let them ransom him. He says as follows. He quotes the Gemara. Says Rabbeinu Meir, Koichov, Kizehu lefi seder hamazolis, shemazel tzedek meshamish b'shar achrona shel erev Shabbos, o malach shelo yitzadkiel. The malachim that the Gemara is talking here about are planets. So it's axiomatic. There are seven koich ve'lechas. There are 7 planets that move. Now there are more than 7 planets that move, but perhaps there are 7 planets that you could see moving to the naked eye. I'm not sure exactly where this number of 7 planets that move come from. The 7 planets that move are, let's see, if I could, there we go. Tzedek, in the there's different orders of how to do it. They are Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Sun, Venus, Mercury, and the Moon. In Hebrew, the Tzedek is Jupiter, maybe. Yeah, Tzedek is Jupiter, and Madim is Mars. Sun and the Moon, and the Sun and the Moon. Forget now exactly what each of the 7 words in Hebrew correspond to which planets, but we'll see as we go on. Okay, so he says like this: the Eibusha set up the world in a way that the mazalis, that the planets are somehow in charge, or not in charge is the wrong word. They are involved in administering shefa, sustenance to this world. We know already in Parashat Zos HaBracha, it says Memeged Tfui Shomesh and Memeged Gerish Yerachim, that there's the sustenance, the shefa that comes from the sun and the moon, And similar is the case with the other planets. Now, of course, it's all Garzim B'yad HaChitzev. They are inanimate. It's all done. There's no element of choice. It's all in the because Hashem designs it such, and etc. And that was, of course, the mistake of the early idolaters in the time of Enosh, that they understood that the planets were also worthy of thanking. But that's the way the Eibush has set up the world. That on the fourth day of creation, the planets were set into their cycle, and from that time on, with the exception of the Mabels, perhaps, every hour, one of those planets has its turn to be in charge. It's in charge for that hour, and then it moves on to the next planet. So there's a cycle of the 7 planets. So says the Maramurot like this: that the 2 Malachim. So there's one Malach called Tzedek, that's Jupiter. He's the last hour of Friday. Now, let's imagine, when those of you who come to the Gemara class, we've done this already. Let's put our day on a 12-hour day, 12-hour night, starting from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So 5 p.m. on Friday is the Mazel of Tzedek. That's the hour of Jupiter. That's the last hour of Friday. Right now, obviously in the winter, the summer Shabbos comes in earlier and later, but at least on your ideal clock, if you're in the month of Tishrei or Nisan and you're living on the equator, that's going to be the last hour of Friday. So the Malach that corresponds, that's sort of associated with the planet of Tzedek, of Jupiter, is his name is Tzadkiel. Well, we like that, Tzedek. That sounds good, right? V'zeh Mazel Tov. That's the good Mazel, and that's the good angel that accompanies you home, because it's the end of Friday and the beginning of Shabbos. So the end of Friday is that Mazel of Tzedek. He's the good angel who gives you a bracha that it should be the same way next week. Madim Mishamish B'Shor Rishon Shalil Shabbos. Mars, Madim, is the Mazel that's the first hour of Friday, that's of Shabbos, that's from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. on our imaginary location and clock. Malach Shaloi, we don't even pronounce the name of his Malach, we call him the Samach Mem. Samach Mem, the way it's spelled is Samach Mem Aleph Lamed, we don't say the word. He's the bad angel. And they both meet each other. This one goes when Shabbos comes in, this one Shabbos comes out, and they are the angels that are accompanying to your house. Parenthetically, I should mention that the English, the secular world also recognizes at some stage, I don't know how it was today, but historically, the secular days of the week also are the same thing. But the difference is that whereas in Torah we call the first hour of the day from 6 to 7, so the mazel, it's a 7-hour cycle, but the mazel of every day of the week is one of those 7. The mazel of Shabbos is the first hour of Shabbos, is Badim, right? And the secular, the calendar, they would count the first to be the mazel, which is soilet at 12 a.m. So Sunday, it's the day of the sun. Monday is the moon. Tuesday, how do you say Tuesday in French? Mardi, that's Mars. Right? Wednesday in French is Mercredi, that's Mercury. Thursday is, how do you say Thursday in French? Let's check this out. Thursday in French. Thursday, I don't know how to pronounce it. It's spelled Jeudi. That's Jupiter, right? Friday is Vendredi, which is Venus, and Saturday is Saturn, right? So each day of the week corresponds to one of those 7 planets. Okay.
It's 12 hours day, 12 hours night, so how is that divided into 7?
Well, you're writing 24 hours into 7. So it's
You
21
said
hours.
each hour is controlled by one of the planets.
Mm-hmm.
So does this cycle go around?
Yeah, it
all
goes
week?
round and round all week, yeah. But if you do 7 times 24 divided by, in other words, the cycle, you get every day has 3 cycles, that's 21, and there's another 3 hours.
Yes.
So you make the cheshbon, you'll see there's never an overlap. There's always
completes.
there's never an overlap. There's no planet that has the first hour of 2 days. The first hour of the day, wherever you put the first hour, is always going to be a different planet every day of the week. If you don't believe me, I've never tried it out, but take a pen and paper, figure it out. If I'm wrong, I'll be
68
quiet.
hours
Give me a
in the
minute.
week,
Okay.
divided by 7,
Is what?
24.
Okay.
Okay. Now, in other sources, in the Maharil, I think, in the Maharil, by the way, Steve, if you see Ari, he was very interested in this topic. I don't know why he's. In the Maharil, who's also, definitely stay for breakfast. In the Maharil, who we've also been to a number of times, who is from the leading spokesman of Women Hoge Ashkenaz, he talks about this in the context of davening early on Friday. And again, we're working with our imaginary clock, Shabbos davening early. So we've spoken about this in the Gemara class. But he talks about justifying the minhag of davening early on Friday because people want to daven while it's still, and bring in Shabbos while it's still in the positive atmosphere of the Mazel of Tzedek, and before we get into the Mazel of Madim. And of course, he says this only works during the months of Nisan and Tishrei, when that is indeed the first hour of Shabbos. Now, let's look at another brisa. So this brisa is in Brachas Daf Testament base, and hopefully you all learned this brisa 11 years ago when we did Birkas Hachamon, right? Tanu Rabbanon. See the long footnotes. Tanu Rabbanon. Oh. Gosh, look at that.
Oh, wow.
That's all in the first line. Tanu Rabbanon. So one who sees the sun at the beginning of its cycle, the moon in its mightiness, and the planets in their orbits, or the signs of the zodiac in their order. He says the bracha of Baruch Eisem Ma'aseh Bereshis. When does this happen? Every 28 years the major solar cycle begins again. And the Nisan equinox falls in the hour of Shabtai, of Saturn. But to the Tlas Naki Arba in the evening of Tuesday, the night before Wednesday, and that's when you say the bracha, right? The next morning, when you see the sun. So the last time we did it was on Erev Pesach of 2009, which was on Wednesday, and it's always on Wednesday, of course. And the next time will be 28 years later. So, yeah. Okay, Zok Rashi. Rashi says like this. Let's see if I was going to read it from the English to see if it's quicker, but till I find the English over here in these pages of footnotes. So he says that on that night of Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, the sun, the sun is Kufas Nisan, the Nisan equinox is in the hour of Saturn. Says Rashi like this: the first hour of Wednesday is the hour of Saturn, because that's the time that the planets were hung in the sky on the fourth day of creation, and those 7 hours repeat in this cycle of Shatzam Chanchal. So, Shatzam is Shabtoi Tzedek Miznayim, and Chanchal is Chama, not sure, the Nun is Koichav and Levana. Okay, so that's the order of the one after the other, those 7. The Timtza Behek of Sidon Shalom Shemanishois Tchilas Halaylos is Kansash Chalam. So if you want to put that in the order of the days of the week, the first hour of Sunday is going to be Koichav, Monday is going to be tzedek. Yeah. Tuesday is going to be the nun. I don't remember what that is right now. Noiga is nun. And then Wednesday is shin, shabtoi. Okay.
Are we talking from 12 to 1 or from like 6 to 7?
No, he's talking from 6 to 7.
6 to 7. So.
Right, that's right. And Shabbos is Miznaim. That's the last in the list of this cycle is Mem, Miznaim. Sorry, not Miznaim, Madin. Yeah. And that's Mars for Shabbos. Right? And the first hour of midnight, Mars is for Tuesday. That's why Tuesday is Mardi. Right? Okay. So Rashi says like this: Madim, we don't like Madim, so we have another Gemara which talks about what happens in Madim. So there's a Gemara later on in Shabbos, 10 blot later, Daf Kuf Chav Tesem and Beis, where it says like this. Oh, here you have a whole chart with all the days of the week and the night, day, yeah, the whole thing. Okay. So, so here it's talking about when are the days that it's not a good time to let blood. Why? What's the reason you should not let blood on the third day of the week? Because on Tuesday the influence of Mars prevails during the pairs, i.e. the even hours of the day. Okay, so I'm not sure what that means. I just want to know, the context over here is to see what Rashi tells us about Mars. Mazel Madim, he says, Memuna al Hacherev, he's in charge of the sword, Val Hadever on the plague, Val Peronius and bad things. Right? Okay, that's not. I mean, here Rashi explains what that means. The pairs of hours. I think it's a bit too much astronomy for right now. If you want to look, but the point is that Rashi tells us that Madim is not a very good thing. He's the Mazel, right? That's Madim is our Mazel. That's 6 to 7 on Friday. That's the Mazel who's in charge of all the plagues and the swords and deaths, etc. Okay. Now, so far we haven't yet seen any. We've just seen that that's the Mazel that's then, and perhaps in the Maharil said that that's the reason why people daven early on Friday night. People bring in Shabbos or daven Ma'ariv early, because they want to daven in the Mazel of Tzedek, not in the Mazel of Miznaim. By the way, later on in the Gemara class in a couple of weeks' time, we'll get to the question of davening late on Shabbos. So there is a shit in the Rishonim that you're supposed to daven late on Shabbos, and some Rishonim say not on Shabbos, but in Yom Tov. And in the local sugya and brachas, it seems to all be about what time they brought the Korban Musaf and the Korban Tamid on Shabbos, and if in the Beis HaMikdash it was done later than during the week. But perhaps another reason not to daven later than usual on Shabbos is because of the Mazel. The first hour of Shabbos is either Miznaim or another one which we don't like, and so we want to avoid davening in that hour, which usually we daven every day of the week. It's daven right away, early in the morning, the first hour of the day. On Shabbos is delayed a bit because of that Mazel. Maybe we'll get to that later. Okay. But so far we haven't yet seen of any connection, and we've seen that this is connected to the two Malachim who come to Yas, but we haven't yet seen anything mentioned about not making Kiddush. The first person to mention not making Kiddush is the Tikkunei Shabbos. The Tikkunei Shabbos is meyuches to the Arizal. So this comes from the Arizal. Tikkunei Shabbos, this comes from the Arizal. And Tikkunei Shabbos, he says, after davening on Friday, you shouldn't hang around in shul for a long time. It's a mitzvah to make Kiddush quickly. The quicker you make Kiddush, the better you are. And the reason is, we want to come in before the dome. We want to make Kiddush before it is the domain of the Samech Mem and the planet of Mars. But Shabbos as is known.
As is known.
Yeah, it's well known, right? So, yeah.
What? Not to make Kiddush? He's saying.
No, it's well known that that's when Koich Madim is.
I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
Right? Now, the Maharsha, in his commentary Masechtas Tainis, also quotes this. He doesn't quote the Arizal, but he says the same idea. He brings there about how Madim is the first hour of Shabbos, and he finishes off by saying, this is why Hashem commanded us to bring Shabbos an hour early, to bring in Shabbos early. Right? Some people are makbid to bring in Shabbos early. Even I think I mentioned before, in Eretz Yisrael, I've seen people in the dead of winter. It's 2:00, and I'm wrapping up tefillin by the kaisel, and then with time, and there's people coming in dressed in white, and they're ready to be Mekabel Shabbos by Plaga Mincha. Right? That's those who have the chumrah of being Mekabel Shabbos in early. That's the real way to do it. In America, people do it when it's convenient in the summer. But if you want to do the chumrah properly, you do it year round. So that's why we're supposed to bring in Shabbos early. And then he also, he brings in about Shabbos. There we go. Shabbos morning, he says that you should wait an hour to daven because that's the mazel of Shabtoi, Saturn, and somehow, because Saturn is the one before Tzedek. So not that Saturn is bad, but Tzedek is even better. So that's why we delay davening on Shabbos morning, because we want to be able to daven on Shabbos in the mazel of Tzedek. Okay, so much to the Hashkama minyan. Okay, so now, so there's two differences between the one second. Okay, let's move on. So far we've had the Arizal and the Maharsha, both of whom are not halachic authority, are not writing in the context of halacha, the Arizal is Kabbalah, and the Maharsha is his commentary to the Gemara. Let's see how this is brought down in Shulchan Aruch. So the Torah writes, "Kishayavi lebeisei," when you come home, you should hurry to eat right away, because it says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, all. You have to remember it on wine when it comes in. Says the Bishas of the Haimonim should take as soon as Shabbos comes in, you have to make Kiddush. So don't hang around, don't waste any time. Now, so in general, there's a concept of Zriz Makdim mitzvahs. You always do a mitzvah as soon as possible. It's even more pertinent when it comes to Kiddush. Kiddush, that's why, for example, Alter Rebbe explains in Shulchan Aruch that even though why is there every mitzvah you have to do, so you're not allowed to have a meal before you do the mitzvah. Yeah? You're not allowed to have a meal before you daven. Ma'ariv. You set somebody to remind you, okay. Right? But when it comes to Kiddush, not only you're not allowed to have a meal, you're not even allowed to eat anything before Kiddush and before Havdalah. Why not? So the Alter Rebbe explains in Shulchan Aruch, the reason is because the Hatakana of Kiddush is to make Kiddush as soon as Shabbos comes in. So, B'meila, we don't want you to eat anything so that you make Kiddush. That's why Chazal said don't eat anything before Kiddush, so that we shouldn't delay Kiddush at all. Right? And now, so that's what it says in Shulchan Aruch. Now there are two poskim who bring into the equation this mystical concept of the Arizal and the Maharsha about avoiding to make Kiddush and Mazel Madim. So again, let's just recap. The fact that Mazel Madim is the first hour of Shabbos, and that's a negative thing that we already find in very early Chassidei Ashkenaz from the Abu Derham and the Maharil. Later on, we have the Arizal and the Maharsha who say that therefore you should avoid making Kiddush in that hour. Now we come to the Magen Avraham, the Eila Shabbos. The Eila Shabbos is before the Magen Avraham quotes the Eila Shabbos a lot. So the Eila Shabbos seems to be the first halachic authority who quotes it, and he says as follows. And there's a difference between the pay attention. He says the Achronim say that you should make Kiddush before the Mazel of Madim, because the first hour, the beginning of the hour of Shabbos is Mazel Madim, and that's when the Samach Mem is in charge. But the last hour of Friday, that's Mazel Tzedek, and that's very good, and that's connected to the Gemara of the two angels who accompany to your house. And if you didn't make Kiddush while it was still day, so ideal is make Kiddush while it's still day. Be Mekabel Shabbos early. We've discussed this in the past. It's a chumrah to bring in Shabbos early. We have, in Chabad, we have a particular preference to do a different chumrah, namely to daven Ma'ariv with Kriyashma and Ma'ariv Bismanoi. So, and our minhag is that overrides the chumrah of bringing in Shabbos early. But exactly, bringing in Shabbos early, you make Kiddush right away. The Imloi Kiddush is very important. This is the first time we have this reference, which it doesn't say this explicitly in the Marsha or in the Tikkun Shabbos. The Imloi Kiddush from B'yom, if you didn't make Kiddush while it was still day, namely before Mazel Madin, then you should wait until after Mazel Madin. So until now, all we've seen was best to make Kiddush before Mazel Madin. The Shabbos is the first two things. First of all, he's the first Pesach to bring this. And second of all, he's the first one to say that if you didn't manage to do it before, wait till it's over. If you just learned the Arizal or just the Marsha or any of the other, you think, okay, you tried to make it before. If you didn't do it, you didn't do it. Right? But the Shabbos says no, if you didn't do it before, you have to wait till afterwards. Now, the Mogan Avraham is interesting. The Mogan Avraham says like this: Kasav Tikkun Shabbos. The Tikkun Shabbos writes, "Sheikadish Kodim Halayla." You should make Kiddush before night, because Chilas Leil Shabbos, because the first hour is Mazel Mazim. V'chein Kasav B'Tshuvas Ma'aril, and so says the Ma'aril. Now, we've already seen that the Ma'aril doesn't say that you shouldn't make Kiddush, and the Ma'aril just says that that's when Mazel Madim is shoylet, and that's why we daven early on thing. He doesn't say anything about not making Kiddush then. Menachem Azari is the Rameh Mipano, is actually a Sfardisha. It's interesting because until now the Maharil and the Badaham was all Ashkenaz. The Ramah Mipano was a Sfardi who was a halachist and a Kabbalist, and he says that if you're not hungry, you're allowed to wait because you've already done the inyan of Zocher, that you have to remember Shabbos as soon as Shabbos come in. That you've already done when you daven the Ma'ariv, right? It's well known in Kiva Ega that the biblical mitzvah of Kiddush were yotzu when we daven Ma'ariv, and it's only the rabbinic mitzvah that says that you have to do it over a cup of wine that we wait for later. So b'meila, if you're not hungry and you don't want to eat now, you're allowed to wait. Now l'chayra, so here again, the Mogan Avraham doesn't write explicitly that if you didn't make Kiddush before, you should wait till after. All he says he brings the Ramah Mipano that if you're not hungry, you're allowed to wait till later. So there's two ways to understand the Mogan Avraham. Either, in other words, the Mogan Avraham could be understood in two ways. Option A is he's saying like this: make Kiddush as early as possible, because it's a good thing to do Kiddush right away, and to do it as soon as possible in general, and because you want to avoid Mazel Madim. However, if you're looking for someone to rely on, to be lenient, to make it later, you have the Ramah Mipano. Or, that's one way of reading it. An alternative way of reading it is that he's not, the Ramah Mipano is not coming in contrast to what he's just said, but it's in support of what he just says. Make Kiddush before Mazel Madim, and then insert, in square brackets, if you didn't make it before, wait till Madim is over, like the Oila Shabbos said. If you wait till afterwards, you have the problem that you're delaying Kiddush. You could rely on the Ramah Mipano, who says it's not so bad to delay Kiddush because you've davened Ma'ariv already. Yeah, everyone with me? Now, the second way is how the Alter Rebbe understands the Mogan Avraham, because the way the Alter Rebbe quotes it is like this. It's a mitzvah to make Kaddish, to say Kiddush, to sanctify the day of Shabbos verbally, when Shabbos comes in. Chachamim instituted that this should be done over a cup of wine, both when Shabbos comes in, that's what we call Kiddush, and when Shabbos goes out, which is also Kiddush, sanctifying Shabbos, but we call it Havdalah. It's best to do it as soon as possible, or as early as possible when Shabbos comes in. And even if you left shul while it was still day, you could make Kiddush while it's still light outside in order to do Mosif Mechayla La Kodesh, because you've brought in Shabbos already. And if you're not hungry, then, however, if you're not hungry, then you're allowed to wait till later, so because you want to eat the meal at oven, you want to eat the meal with an appetite, and you could rely on the fact, that you've already been yotze the mitzvah of Zachar Yom Shabbos when you daven Ma'ariv. Then he says, Yesh Nizharim, some are careful not to be Mekadesh in the first hour of Shabbos, between 6 and 7. Either before night, which, again, in our imaginary clock, it's before night, but the point is it's before 6. Or after. So even though the Magen Avraham didn't explicitly say this, the Shabbos did, and this is how the Alter Rebbe quotes it, that if you didn't do it before, best to wait till afterwards. And then he finishes off, however, we've already said that it's best to make Kiddush as soon as you come home. So here we have a little bit of ambiguity in the Alter Rebbe as, okay, so if I came home at 6:30, is it best to make Kiddush right away because we already said you're supposed to make Kiddush as soon as you come home? Or is it best to wait till afterwards because Yeshnas Harim not to be Mikadosh in that hour? And the make Kiddush as soon as you come home is telling you, make sure you get home before 6. Or, what some Chassidim I've seen do is, make sure you come home after 7. In other words, if you want to avoid there's two things. One is making Kiddush as early as possible, but that translates into making Kiddush as soon as you come home. So what some people do is that they wait in shul. And it depends on your family dynamic, but if your kids are older, let's say, and your kids are with you in shul, so after davening, you sit down with your kids and you learn for half an hour, and then you go home and you make Kiddush as soon as you come home. Now, hold on. Yeah, so the way he finishes, it does seem clear from the Alter Rebbe that either way, that it's best to make Kiddush before 6 than after 7 if you're able to. But there's other conflicts because we're also makbid, like we've discussed in other classes, to daven Ma'ariv and Krishma with the brachas after Tzeisak Yechavim. So you can't eat your cake and have it. Okay. How do we calculate the hours? Just a second. Here we go. Hebrew. This ambiguity in the Alter Rebbe is addressed in a letter by the Rebbe. Bear with me.
It shows Marius? Is that what we're talking about?
We'll get there. No. Yeah. Yep. It's interesting because, okay, so let's before we talk about some other things, let's talk about how we calculate the hours, and then. So, it's not Shoyz Manius, it's hours of 60 minutes, because that's the cycle of the 7 planets, as hours of 60 minutes. How do you calculate the hours? So actually, in recent years, if you look in the history and the Chabad journals, the Haras of Urim, you'll find various extrapolations. But in recent years, they actually published the Rebbe's. There's a published letter from the Rebbe about it, which even within the published letter, there's been different shittas of how to learn it. But now that the handwritten copy of that letter was published, so it leaves no room for doubt. The handwritten letter, published letter of the Rebbe goes like this. So it was not really the Rebbe's letter. It's a letter to the Rebbe that the Rebbe responded to in terse, on the side. The Rebbe had spoken about this or written about this, and there was a machlokes amongst the scholars of 770 as to what the Rebbe meant. So somebody wrote to the Rebbe and he said to the Rebbe, there's some discussion here about what this means, and these are the three options. Option number one option number one is option number one is 6 hours after Chatzois of that day. So you look on the calendar, today Chatzois is at 12:32, so from 6:32 to 7:32 is when you don't make Kiddush. That's option one. Option two is 6 to 7 on the clock. It doesn't matter what time of the year, it doesn't matter what time zone you're in, it doesn't matter what part of the time zone you're in, it doesn't matter. Option number three is 6 hours after the average Chatzois of your time zone. That means So let me explain a little bit how time zones work. The globe is 360 degrees, right? You go around the world, the circle is 360 degrees. That 360 degrees cycle takes 24 hours. So each hour is 15 degrees, right? If I move degree, right? If I travel from here, when the sun travels from point A 15 degrees to the west,
The sun traveling?
the sun rises
Okay.
Right? The sun rises in the east, sets at the west. When the sun travels 15 degrees,
Meaning,
Yes?
that's traveling.
yes, that's an hour. Now, it used to be back, I think until the early 1800s, if I'm not mistaken, that every city had a personal clock. When the sun was overhead and the sundial showed no shadow, that was 12. That was noon, and you worked from there. Then there became one. I think it mainly became globalized with the invent of trains, and you had to have a train schedule, which meant something. So we had to have some sort of globalized time. So the Day Committee, they divided the world into time zones, and approximately every 15 degrees they added an hour. Right, so we start with GMT, with London, with Greenwich Mean Time. That's the 0. You go 15 degrees west, you're an hour behind London. You go 15 hours east, you're an hour ahead of London, right? Until you go around the whole world. And every location, if you Google any location, it's going to tell you, Chicago is GMT minus 6. That means we're 90 degrees west of Greenwich, right? The problem is that we're not 90 degrees behind Greenwich, because we don't make a time zone every 2 blocks. We make a time zone every 15 degrees. So, but the sun is moving. It's not like it stays in one place and then an hour later it jumps there. It's moving the whole time. So technically, in West Rogers Park, we may be 5 minutes or 10 minutes ahead of Milwaukee, right? But nobody says, oh, in Chicago it's 9:40 and in Milwaukee it's 9:30. We don't work that way. We split it up into hours. So when I say that it's 12 noon over here, it's not really 12 noon. In London, when you say in Greenwich, when you say it's 12 noon, it's 12 noon. At 12 o'clock in Greenwich, the sun is exactly overhead, right? But if you go 7.5 degrees west of Greenwich, yeah, then it's going to be at 11:30. The sun is going to be overhead.
And it's the Roshim of the sun that we're concerned about.
No, it's not the Roshim. No. You'll have to listen to the recording the first half of the class. But we're trying to figure out when noon is, when the scientific noon is.
Okay.
Right? So the way, the simple way to do it is to just check what time Chatzos is on the day of the equinox, and you figure it out. But the logic behind it is that you want to know when is when is Chatzos, when is the average Chatzos in this thing. And so in that letter of the Rebbe said, logically, what you should say is option 1, that it's 6 hours after Chatzos today. Then the Rebbe crossed out option 2. Option 2 was that it's 6 to 7 on the clock. That option the Rebbe crossed out. That's nothing, like that doesn't even begin, right? But in practice, so the Rebbe said, really, logically, I would say option 1. But in practice, what I've seen the Chassidim do is option 3, that it's 6 hours after Chatzos over in your place. So, what is, Ari, you're usually my Google guy. What, that way is longitude, right? What's the longitude of Chicago, right? Longitude of Chicago is, sorry for Google. Okay, we are 87.62 degrees west. Let's call it 87.5 degrees west, right? So that means we're 2.5 degrees off 90. So we call ourselves 6 hours GMT minus 6. Our clocks are set to be 6 hours behind Greenwich, but really we're 2.5 degrees east of that, right? Now, if 15 degrees is an hour, and 2.5 degrees is 10 minutes, right? So B'meila in Chicago, it's actually a little bit more because it's maybe 9.5 minutes because it's 0.62, yeah? So in Chicago, 6 to 7 is 5:50 to 6:50. That's when, right? And in the summer, of course, when we change the clock, that doesn't have any bearing on the planets. That's just completely arbitrary, and now I think there's debates about changing it more or less or whatever. Yeah, in the summer it's 6:50 to 7:50. When we move the clock ahead. Otherwise, you would have a Pashta Eitzah every Friday. If you come home, it's between 6 and 7. Just move the clock a few minutes, and then you can make Kiddush. Right?
Which is why we don't worry about it so much in the summer.
Well, there's only a few weeks of the year. By the up and the down, you have to worry about it. Depends on what time Shabbos is, and depends on how far your walk is from shul. Yeah, for Bob, his walk is 2 minutes, so he has to worry about it on certain weeks. For Rabbi Epstein, whose walk is 20 minutes, it's going to be different weeks, right? But the point is that on the standard clock that we're on now, it's 5:50 to 6:50. If you really want to be precise, it might be 5:51 to 6:51. And when we're on daylight savings time, then it's 6:50 to 7:50. Now, so that is the. Now it's interesting that another letter that was. It seems like the Rebbe took this very seriously. In fact, another letter that was recently published, where somebody wrote to the Rebbe something about having guests, that if he has guests who are not makbid, so as far as the guest is concerned, it's not his minhag. And as far as he's concerned, while he's engaging in the mitzvah of achnasas archim, and we have a principle that shema mitzvah lo yeda dovara, so I'm doing a mitzvah, so the mazalas won't have any bad effect on me, so I should be able to do it. And the Rebbe wrote something back very sharp, and it's mind-boggling. I don't understand it, but I mean, that's what the Rebbe said. Like something along the lines of, well, if you're making kiddush between 6 and 7, then it's not a mitzvah because you're not supposed to make kiddush then. So having said that, there are other letters of the Rebbe where the Rebbe does give room for such a thing. For example, there are rumors, or not just rumors, there are indeed communities in Israel who didn't accept this minhag. So, and there's a number of letters of the Rebbe where the Rebbe addresses the question of whether or not this minhag is binding in Israel as well. By the way, in Israel, I believe Israel is on the Cairo clock. That means, yeah. So, I believe in Israel it's 5:40 to 6:40. In Detroit, it's even more extreme. Detroit Batson belongs in the other time zone, so it belongs in Central. So I think it's 6:30 to 7:30 or something. So in one of the letters, the Rebbe says it could be that in Israel they didn't accept it, and Shem Mitzvah Yedid Avara. So to quote that letter of the Rebbe as being the only, the Rebbe said it's absolutely not, I don't think is honest. I think there is some ambiguity in the Rebbe's approach to it, but there definitely is that expression. Over the years, I have heard, as far as it doesn't apply to red wine, to white wine, or to this, that, but those have over the years been demonstrated to be myths, and it was based on somebody's mistake that thought that Madim had something to do with the word Odom, which is red, but that's been debunked. There are many Chassidim, not Chabad, other Chassidim who are not makbid on this at all, even though it is quoted by the Mogen Avraham and it is in the Arizal. Obviously, the question is raised, a number of questions. One of the questions is, in Mazal Yisrael, we know that Yidden are not bound by Mazalis, so why are we taking the Mazalis so seriously? But even that, Rashi says, a Mazal Yisrael means that if you daven, you could, not that there's no effect of the Mazalis, but if you daven, you could extricate yourself from that effect. Some have said that, there's another question, so in our Nusach of Ma'ariv, in Chabad, Nusach Hari, in Hashkivenu, we cut the bracha in half. We just say, Hashkivenu in l'shalom, Saknei beit tovim fanacha, we don't, and that's it, Baruch atah Hashem ha'peres am Yisrael. But other Nuschos, Ashkenaz, outside of Chabad, they say the whole bracha, Shmoi Tzisenu v'yeinu, guard us, and Hasis Satan, remove the evil, and guard us and protect us. And so the question is, why don't we say it? We don't say it on Shabbos because we are not on Shabbos. We don't need the protection. Shabbos itself protects, right? So if we're not worried about saying Shmoi Tzisenu v'yeinu on Shabbos, so why are we worried about the negative effects of making Kiddush in that hour? So perhaps these are all questions which we can sort of muse about, but perhaps there's some suggested there's a difference between Yachid and Rabbim, whether it's a single person or the whole community. Some have suggested that the protection of Shabbos is is ki eshmira Shabbos kel ishmireni, that only if you're absolutely confident that you're keeping Shabbos 100% the way it's supposed to be, then you have the protection of Shabbos. There's also the question of Yosher B'Seiser. The Gemara in Shua says that Yosher B'Seiser is Shir Shal Pagoim. It's Psalm 91 that we say it in the Krishma. We do say it on Friday night. Yeah, there's a question about whether or not it's appropriate to say that that kapitel on Shabbos. Either way, these are topics of further exploration of, in general, what's the effect of the mazalos on Yidden as an individual and as a community, and specifically what the effect of the mazalos are on Shabbos. But Lamaisa, this is quoted by the Arizal, and this is something an Indian of the Arizal based already on the early Rishonim Ashkenaz, the Abu Derham and the Maharil. It's quoted lahalacha by the Ola Shabbos, by the Magen Avraham and Alter Rebbe, and the Chabad custom is to be careful about it. Officially, the Chabad custom should be to be careful to make Kiddush before 6, but like I said before, there's some other things. First of all, we're also careful to daven Ma'ariv at night, so if that's in conflict, that's in conflict. And also, at least in the yeshiva system, there is Seder Chassidus. And we saw Alter Chassidim on Friday night was a time when they learned Chassidus for a couple of hours, and daven Ma'ariv, and then daven Ma'ariv, and sometimes even daven Ma'ariv ba'arichas for many hours, for a long time, and went home late. And we didn't see by Chassidim HaHakpada to come home early on Friday night. Perhaps you could say, and this is something which is harder to say because you don't know what goes on in people's private home. It could be that Chassidim were makbid that when they came home to make Kiddush right away. But we definitely did see Chassidim delay going home on Shabbos, and especially the Seder HaYeshiva that the Rabbeim, established, that the Rebbe Shabbos established, that was the Seder to learn Chassidus and to daven for a long time on Friday night. And second. Relying on the I lost my train of thought. There was another thought I wanted to say, but okay.